In this module, I'm going to talk about something that makes most people really uncomfortable. I'm going to talk frankly about whether or not you could benefit from getting some professional help. No more pretending things are just fine when they're not. We're done with that. And when I talk about getting help, I'm talking about both medication and talk therapy. I'm talking about finding the right help for you, whatever that looks like. And if you decide you've suffered enough and you're ready to reach out for help, I'm going to explain in detail exactly how to go about getting the right help for you. So let's start by talking about how to decide whether or not getting professional mental counseling medication is right for you or not. Around my house, we have lots of discussions about what repairs and chores we can do ourselves and when we need to call for help. Sometimes it's completely clear that we can change that filter on our own. We don't have to call anybody. It's equally clear that we're going to need an expert to deal with the water dripping from the light fixture in the kitchen ceiling. They're different. Deciding when to seek professional help for anxiety is a similar process. Is this something you can manage, take care of by yourself, by talking to your friends, reading some good books, just looking things up online? Or is it time you called for help? If you're thinking, gee, I'm not sure, maybe I could use some professional help, here are two really important questions to ask yourself. First of all, does the issue I'm dealing with, whatever it is, does it impact my life in a major way? If it's annoying, if it's temporary, if it's not taking over your life, maybe it is something you can deal with yourself. Secondly, are you suffering in silence? If you are, that has got to stop. If you're suffering in any way, it's time to reach out and get help. If you broke your arm or your leg, or you were suffering chest pains, you'd call for help. Same thing here. Please promise me no more suffering. If you're still on the fence about getting help, here are 10 things to consider to help you sort through the challenges and the choices. Number one is not negotiable. If you are considering suicide, considering harming yourself in any way, if you have a plan or are you thinking about it, you need to stop right here, right now. Call a trusted friend, call 911, get yourself to an emergency room, call the suicide prevention number 1-800-273-TALK 8255. This is a moment where it's absolutely clear you need help. And let me just say, no matter how hopeless things feel right now, no matter where you are, no matter the pain, I promise you there is help for you on the other end of the line. But no one can help you until you take this first step. So right now, take action. All right, that's number one. Number two, if you've experienced trauma, whether you've experienced the traumatic events yourself or you've witnessed trauma, if you're having trouble sleeping, if you suffer nightmares, flashbacks, depression, anxiety, any of those lingering effects of the trauma, please consider getting some professional help. And maybe you're saying to yourself, well, I'm doing okay. Nobody would ever know from looking at me and my life that I am a mess inside. Let me say to you, doing okay is not good enough. Getting help will get you started on the road to feeling better immediately. Trauma is tough to deal with, and we have so many ways to help people with trauma feel better. You don't have to do this alone. It's the same with grief. 3 is grief. Very similar kinds of things, side effects, symptoms with grief. Now, loss and grief are a part of life, but if you're still struggling, if your grief isn't better, 6 to 12 months out, if it's interfering with your life, getting help can be useful. Reclaim your life. 4, if you're feeling hopeless, if you're telling yourself, nothing's ever gonna change, if there's no joy left in your life, therapy can help you find hope again. If you've lost interest in things you love to do, if you're feeling like this is never going to get better, getting help can help you regain your sense of perspective, and it can allow you to find the fun again. So important. 5, if you're struggling with drug, alcohol abuse, other addictions, gambling, shopping, gaming, if you're turning to substances or abusing substances, or you have an addiction to anything that affects the quality of your life, getting treatment can help get your life back on track. And as an aside, if you've been to rehab before, if you've reached out to professionals before and things didn't work out, this is the moment to pick up the phone, make the appointment, try again. Things change, you change, and this time can be different. 6, you might think about getting professional help if your life just isn't working anymore. You're sad, you're scared, things feel out of control, you walk around angry at the world for no particular reason or for some very particular reason. Somehow you've run your life into a ditch, nothing's getting better, and you don't know what to do. Getting some help can often turn those life challenges around. So reach out. 7, if you're experiencing unexplained physical symptoms, you've been to your PCP, done the test, nothing wrong with you physically, maybe the stomach ache, the sore neck, the sleeplessness, the tight jaw, the headache, whatever symptom, is something going on emotionally. Going to a professional can get you some answers to that physical symptom that keeps showing up. And it can help you find ways to heal both your mind and your body. 8. Now, this one's a tough one. You might want to consider getting some professional help. If someone close to you says, hey, I think you could use some help. I know it's tough to hear, but I really do recommend you swallow hard, say thank you, and just at least consider their suggestion. They may see something that you don't, and in fact, they may be right. 9, you might want to consider getting some professional help if you've been through a change, a difficult change, or even an easy change. You've been through the change, but you're not handling the way you'd like. You're recently divorced, diagnosed, moved to a new state, lost a job. But if you've had a baby, adopted a child, or retired, there are lots of changes that happen to us throughout our lives. Some we expect and some are a surprise. Whether the change is something you've hoped for and worked hard to bring about, or it happens out of the blue, change can upset the balance of your life. And if you're having trouble coping with that change, talking to someone can help restore balance and calm to the life you're living. Finally, 10, you might consider getting professional help if you realize you can't do it alone anymore. One morning you wake up and you think, I just can't keep doing this. What I'm doing isn't working. Maybe like me, you've read all the books and you've been struggling on your own. If you feel like you've been battling anxiety on your own forever and you're going nowhere, talking to a professional might get you back on the road to feeling good again. And finally, I love this. Therapy does not have to be a lifetime commitment. David Sack, MD, reports in a study published in the Journal of Consulting and Clinical Psychology that, quote, 88% of therapy goers reported improvements after just one session. Let me repeat that amazing good news. After just one therapy session, 88% of those clients felt better. 88%. So if you're suffering in any way, I'm hoping you'll at least consider reaching out to a mental health professional. Now, if you decide that you're ready for that help, the next question is, how do you go about getting the right help for you? Begin by getting a recommendation from someone you trust. According to an article in Consumer Reports, studies show that, quote, people who find a therapist through a recommendation from a friend, a family member, or a doctor have more success than those who pick someone at random from the phone book or their health plan's provider directory. Okay, so it matters where you get your referral. And that's all in good. But what if you don't want to ask a friend or a family, don't have a primary care physician? You can call a local university that has a good psychology department, ask for a recommendation, or you can get in touch with a professional organization online that screen their members and will stand behind them. And we provided some contact information for those organizations right here for you. Okay, so now you have the name of one or two possible therapists. How do you decide who's the right therapist for you? Simple. You're going to ask them questions. You can learn a lot from a brief conversation. And if you're not sure where to get started, here are some great questions that you can ask to get that conversation rolling. Number one, ask, are you licensed or credentialed? It's really important to make sure you're working with a qualified professional. Your mental health is important. And having a license means that the therapist, at a minimum, has met specific educational and clinical requirements. They've had a background check, and they continue to meet certain educational and professional requirements to keep that license up to date. And more importantly for you, between us, you have a recourse if something goes wrong during treatment. You have a place to get some satisfaction. 2, how long have you been in practice? Having some experience in any field is important, and it's no difference here. You want to look for someone who's been in practice a while, or look for someone who's working in a multi-therapist practice where a new therapist gets a lot of guidance and support through the process. Really important. 3, are you taking new clients? If you get a therapist who comes highly recommended, they may just not be taking new clients. So if it's not an emergency, you have some options. You can ask if the therapist has a waiting list and add your name if you feel like waiting, or ask the therapist if they can recommend a peer. Chances are a good therapist will know other therapists in the area and might be able to suggest one who would be a good match for you. So speak up, ask the question. You can ask them if they have a specialty, anxiety, panic disorder, whatever. Not every good therapist has a specialty, but if you can find one who deals with your particular mental health issue, it might be really helpful. 5, what kind of treatments do you offer? What treatment would you use or recommend for someone with my diagnosis, if you know that diagnosis? There are all sorts of treatments and approaches to helping people feel better. And, you may already know what works for you and find someone who uses that approach. But if you have no idea about approaches or techniques, asking an expert about how they approach that practice of therapy gives you a real idea about the depth of their knowledge, their philosophy about what therapy should look like, and who they are as a person. Therapy is different for everyone. We're all different. And it's critical that you find a therapist who's a really good fit with you. Ask them where they're located. I know it's not a hugely important question, but in my experience, if you're driving a long distance to meet with a therapist, down the road, that long distance can become an excuse for not showing up. Ask them when they're available, and more important, what happens in case I have an emergency. You want to make sure that the therapist has appointment times that will work for you. And you want to know how that therapist is going to handle emergencies. What happens if you're in crisis? Can you call the therapist even if you don't have an appointment? If you call and leave a message, how quickly do they respond? Will someone be covering for that therapist when they're out of the office? It's really important to know all of that before you sign on, because how you deal with an emergency is really important information. 8, how long do you think the treatment will take? Well, that's a tough question to answer, maybe impossible. It's different for everybody. But opening that discussion with the therapist gives you an idea about what they're thinking about a possible treatment plan. And it gives you some parameters about how you're going to work together. She says, this will take 8 years. That's probably a little off-putting. But if they say 2 weeks, again, something to think about. 9, does my insurance cover your services? Will I have a copay? A lot of people hesitate to talk about money with professionals, but it's a really important part of the relationship. It's important to have an open and honest conversation about the cost of their services and how they expect to be paid. And it's important to know that before you make your decision. 10, if my insurance doesn't cover your services, do you offer a sliding scale? Some therapists do. Again, it's important to ask. It's important to be fully informed before you choose a therapist. And let me just add, if cost is an issue for you, you may be able to find affordable mental health care through the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Administration. And we've provided contact information for you here. All right. Finally, as you chat with that therapist, look for a connection. Does he answer your questions in a way that makes sense? Do you feel comfortable with her? If not, this is not the therapist for you. The bond between client and therapist is essential to the process of healing. Next, I'm going to talk about the stigma of going to talk to someone. The good news is women are far more likely than men to seek professional help for anxiety. The less good news is there is still a stigma attached to going and seeking mental health care. Women who wouldn't think twice about going to the doctor with the flu or a UTI hesitate at the idea of going for therapy. We whisper about poor Hezzy. She couldn't handle that divorce. She's got to go see somebody. We tell each other, I can't afford therapy, or therapy's for losers and crazy people, not smart, tough women like us. Or we're so ashamed of the abuse, the addiction, or the secret we're keeping. The last thing we want to do is share that weakness with another human being. There are literally hundreds of reasons all of us put off going to therapy. But here's the truth. Most people who seek therapy are not crazy. They're not broken, bad, friendless, or weak. They're you and I, people who need a little help in dealing with their lives. So if you're tired of suffering with anxiety, reach out for help. You do not have to do this alone. And if you're uncomfortable at the thought of talking to a stranger or in person, or there isn't a therapist in your area, you can now get help. You can get therapy online. And again, we have provided here a couple of great reputable sites for you to look at. Finally, remember, you are the customer. You and your insurance company are paying for this service. If for any reason you aren't happy with the way things are going, speak up. Let the professional know what's not working for you in the relationship, the fees, the service in general. It may be awkward to bring up the subject of money, the fact that the therapist is never on time or seems distracted during your session. But if you don't bring it up, it won't get fixed. Let me wrap up by saying I know asking for help can be tough. But it's time to stop pretending you're okay if you're not. It's time we all treat and care for our mental health and well-being the same way we treat and care for our physical health and well-being. No more shame, no more blame, no more suffering. In our next module, we're going to take a look at where we've been and what's ahead.